Greetings and salutations, loyal crew, and welcome back to the Test of Time Metaseries, the show where I play Civilizations 3 through 6 as every civilization that appears in all four of those games. Apologies again for the delay on this episode. If you didn't catch my update post, I'd originally wanted to post this in January, but the deadline was looming and the video wasn't coming out very well, so I decided to just scrap it and start over. New year, new format, new problems. Anyway, today we're going to be starting a new cycle as Korea, as chosen by the Wheel of Destiny last episode. In Civ 3, Korea is scientific and commercial. Scientific means we get a free technology when we enter a new era, we get a production discount on buildings like libraries and universities, and we have an increased chance of generating great scientific leaders. Commercial means our cities experience less corruption, gain a free commerce when they hit 7 population, and get a discount on buildings like marketplaces and banks. Korea's unique unit is the Hwacha, which is a very interesting little piece, but I'll get into that when we unlock them. And today we're going to be doing something a little different to how I've previously run these series. See, we've explored most of our victory conditions across the series and haven't done much besides focusing on those victories. So I decided to give this series an extra little gimmick. Since Korea is a scientific focused civilization in all 4 games, I've decided we should aim for maximum science and see just how much science output we can crank out in one single city. For this episode, we're going to be focused on our capital for 2 main reasons. Number 1, it's easier to find optimal terrain when we can just restart until we get a good starting location. That way, we don't have to do several dozen turns of exploration and expansion and don't risk our ideal spot being taken by somebody else. Number 2, in Civ 3, your capital experiences no corruption, probably the most unrealistic aspect of this game, so every single unit of commerce we earn will go directly into our science output. In order to maximize our science output, we're going to need to know how to create science output. In Civ 3, there are 2 methods of producing science yields, or beakers as these little symbols are called. The first, and by far most effective, is converting commerce yields directly into science via these budget sliders in the Domestic Advisor tab. These sliders determine how much of the total commerce in each city is converted into science and happiness, with the rest being turned into money. At first, the ratio of commerce to science is 1:1, meaning 1 commerce becomes 1 science, but buildings like libraries will improve that ratio, giving more science from each commerce. The second method is assigning citizens to scientist specialist jobs. Citizens doing so produce 3 science each, regardless of corruption in the city. However, this science output is not modified by any buildings or wonders, and citizens doing specialist jobs are citizens that are not producing any food or shields. So this is really only something I do when a city has more citizens than tiles, or when a city is so corrupt that most of its commerce is going to be wasted anyway. I should also explain for any newcomers, I use a mod while playing Civ 3 on this channel. It's a mod I made myself called Skipper's Tweaks. It's a single-player focused rebalance mod, though I have heard people have enjoyed playing it multiplayer. I'll put a link in the description of this video, as well as all future Civ 3 videos, to where you can download it and play for yourself. Also, I've introduced a new mod that I haven't used on this channel called C3X. It's not a traditional mod in that you don't load it when you start a new game, instead it directly modifies the game files so it's always active, kind of like Enhanced UI for Civ 5 or Buffy mod for Civ 4. It mostly introduces some quality of life changes and improvements to the AI, as well as a lot of bug fixes. Alright, with all that knowledge, we need a start that will maximize the commerce output of our capital city. What we're looking for are the 3 following conditions. 1. The coast. There are 2 wonders that will massively increase the commerce a city produces that can only be built in coastal cities. 2. A long river. Tiles next to a river gain 1 extra commerce for free, so the more tiles in our capital's workable range that are next to a river, the better. 3. Commerce boosting resources. Finally, there are many resources that will increase the commerce output of the tile they're on. Out of those we can see at the start of the game, this list includes all luxury resources, gold, sugar, and tobacco. I'm aiming for at least 1 of these in range, since these are a lot rarer than rivers and coastlines, as you can imagine. Now, that list of criteria might sound reasonable to you. We're only looking for 3 things, how hard can it be to find a start that checks all those boxes? Well, considering it took me 44 rerolls to get the start that you're looking at now, let's just say you'd be surprised. Well, we've got our capital settled, so let's discuss our research order. Korea starts with bronzeworking and alphabet, so we don't need to research those ourselves. Bronzeworking unlocks one of those wonders I mentioned earlier, the Colossus. I'll go over what it does later. I decided to prioritize philosophy, which will not only unlock the other commerce-boosting wonder, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, but will also grant us a free technology if we are the first to research it, like liberalism in Civ 4. I'll take literature as my free tech, then research Code of Laws, which gives us courthouses. Then I'll go for currency for marketplaces, ceremonial burial for temples, map making for harbors and galleys, and then just backfill the rest of the text we need to end the era. I'll need to adjust this queue as the game progresses, since we'll likely gain a free tech or 2 or 5 from goody huts, and we'll be able to trade for techs with other civilizations as well. Speaking of other civilizations, I've spotted our first neighbor, Greece, a fellow scientific civ. We didn't exchange anything other than pleasantries though, as we don't really have anything to trade with. Thankfully, their unique unit is a replacement for the spearmen, so we won't be fighting them on the battlefield unless we attack them. Not long after that, we finally found our second city, Pyongyang. Questionable name aside, this city will end up being very significant going forward. A little more exploring introduces us to our other neighbor, Sumeria, yet another scientific civ. These two are our only neighbors on this continent, and they both have early game unique units. If you're wondering why any of that's relevant, well, I don't mean to spoil future diplomatic developments, but don't get too attached to these guys, is all I'll say. I found our third city, Wonsan, to the south. As I begin to expand a bit more during the expansion phase, I construct several kuras to try to find the other continents on the map, and hopefully find some trade partners. Unfortunately, my luck is horrendous in that regard, as they always seem to sink immediately upon leaving the coast, which is a 50-50 chance each turn. Nevertheless, I'm going to keep trying, because kuras are cheap and I gotta win that coin flip eventually. I found Pusan by all these floodplains to the north. In retrospect, I should have found it a little farther south, because in this position it has basically no shields. A turn later, I found Nampo to the south to grab these sources of dyes. I also noticed Greece is settling into the southern area, which is honestly fair considering their capital is right there, but I want the land for myself. Well, I can worry about that later, because now I've discovered philosophy, and for my free tech, I choose literature, as planned. Libraries are going to be instrumental in getting our general science output up, as well as our output in Seoul. Since we have enough cities outside of Seoul to crank more settlers out of, I decided it's finally time to start building the Colossus. This wonder will add +1 commerce to every tile in Seoul that has at least one already. I know the production numbers look bad, but that's just because the settler production has our pop at 1. It'll get better once the population starts growing again. In some more good news, I finally win the Kura coin flip and managed to cross the ocean. I also found Jeju at the head of this river. The first civ I meet on the second continent is the Ottomans, who will definitely be someone we interact with a lot. I continue exploring and expanding, founding Gyeongsan in this quaint little mountain valley and Ulsan to the south of Nampo. I encounter the Maya on the other continent, who are rather stingy with their technology and won't trade ironworking to me for anything. I also found Incheon on the coast between Jeju and Busan. My apologies if I'm butchering these pronunciations of these city names, I don't know how to speak Korean. Not long after that, the Colossus Gambit pays off and we finish constructing it in Seoul. See, didn't I tell you not to worry about the construction timer? Now's as good a time as any to check how much science we're making here in Seoul now. And we're making 12 science. Okay, so that doesn't sound very impressive right now, but this is only the beginning. I meet the Inca on the other continent, who are much more generous than the Maya with their technology, as I managed to trade for not only ironworking, but horseback riding. I found Pyeongchang to the south of Ulsan, and I'm noticing that we're a little boxed in here. I hadn't really registered it before, but Greece and Sumeria's starts are kinda awkwardly placed in comparison to ours. I'm going to settle as many cities as I can before resorting to war, but that is probably going to result in a lot of snaking. Case in point, I settled Taejon to the northeast of Gyeongsan, with a single tile of land connecting the two, past Sumeria's borders. After all the tech trading I've been doing, as well as the free techs I've gotten from goody huts, my tech queue needs some reordering. I prioritize currency for markets, which will give money and happiness, and map making for harbors and galleys. We get a bit of a double feature, as I found Paegam to the south and Mampo to the north, both in the same turn. I found Kaesong to the north of Mampo and start the construction of the pyramids in Seoul. With how snaky the borders are gonna get, the free culture will come in very handy. However, I soon decide that Seoul would be better off building the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus and shift the production of the mids to Pyongyang instead. Another disclaimer for the newcomers, the Mausoleum gets a big overhaul in this mod, and instead of just giving some happiness, it acts like it does in Civ 6. It gives +1 to every yield on every coastal water tile in the city where it's built. Since Seoul has quite a few coastal tiles in its range, this will give it a massive boost to its economy across the board. My indecisiveness strikes again as I move the mids to Jeju and have Pyongyang build a marketplace instead. The next several turns are just more settling, so let's rapid fire through the cities. Cheongju, Sariwan, Suwon, and Haeju are all built one after another, further snaking between cities settled between our neighbors. I build a galley to ferry 2 more settlers over to this spot to the southeast. Taegu is founded, and after dropping off the second settler, I send the galley to explore the south, where it fucking dies. Chinjae is founded, and I get a pop-up prompting me to build the Forbidden Palace, which I will definitely do in the very near future and will definitely not completely forget about for the rest of the game. To the northeast, I encounter the Celts, who have joined the party on this continent. Turns out there's a third continent right to the northeast of ours, and the Celts have been there the whole time. I finish researching Republic, and decide to take the risk and switch immediately. The Empire descends into anarchy, meaning nothing can be produced and no commerce is collected. Lack of commerce being turned into happiness means a few cities revolt, but they are placated quickly and not much else happens before things settle down. I swap to Republic for all the juicy bonus commerce and to rid myself of the despotism penalty. However, the lack of unit support I get from Republic is now eating me alive, so I'm going to have to slash the science budget to remain afloat for the time being. In some more bad news, the Maya sniped the pyramids from me, so Jeju starts working on the Temple of Artemis instead. Now that we're in Republic with that extra commerce, I decided to see how Seoul is doing. It's only at 13 science at the moment, but the science budget has been lowered and we still have the mausoleum and a library to build. To wrap up this era of the game, I found 2 more cities. Tongchang to the south, which is apparently the first strategic resources I've hooked up this entire game, and Chengfu to the east here. These are the last cities I'm going to be settling myself, so now it's time to start building some infrastructure. Speaking of infrastructure, now that I have unlocked Monarchy, I decided to start building the Hanging Gardens in Pyongyang. If I can get this, it will help alleviate the happiness struggles I know I'm going to face in the future. Remember, I have one attempt at this under my belt already. A few turns later, Seoul finishes building the mausoleum, which triggers a golden age. Thankfully, since I decided to switch to Republic before finishing the mausoleum, we can benefit more from the increased yields given by the golden age. I finally meet the last civ on the map, the Aztecs, who are sharing the last continent with the Celts. While I was recording this, I didn't realize this was their home continent initially. They're almost the same color as the Ottomans on the map, so I thought they started on the second continent and just muscled their way onto the Celts' homeland. Jeju gets another wonder sniped from under it as Greece, rather fittingly, builds the Temple of Artemis. I consider having Jeju work on the Hanging Gardens, but doing that would waste 63 shields, which is a lot, so I decide to have Jeju work on Sun Tzu's Art of War instead. Seoul finishes building a library, and since the Golden Age is giving us so much more money, I decide to raise the science budget back up a bit. With the extra pop, mausoleum, library, and Golden Age, Seoul is now making a solid 60 science. Quite the improvement. Now that Seoul is done with all that, I have to start building the Great Lighthouse. Pyongyang finishes building the Hanging Gardens, giving my cities 2 free happiness each, as well as 4 total extra happiness in Pyongyang itself. As good as it was, the Golden Age has ended. However, thanks to my cities having higher population, better tile improvements, and marketplaces, the budget remains intact. The good news doesn't stop there though, as Sumeria snipes the Great Lighthouse, so Seoul has to swap. I have to start working on Leo's workshop, but this is only a temporary arrangement. More wonder news, Jeju finishes building the Art of War, so I now have barracks in all of my cities. Pyongyang starts working on the Knights Templar. Free units are always nice. I also start building a few knights here and there, again, all in preparation. I unlock Astronomy, and with that I swap Seoul over to building Copernicus' University. Oh, for Christ's sake, why do I always get that one wrong? I unlock Astronomy, and with that I swap Seoul over to building Copernicus' Observatory. This wonder acts like a super library, giving a plus 100% science output boost to the city it's built in. Thanks to Seoul sticking a fair amount of its shields into Leo's workshop, it finishes Copernicus' observatory in no time, as total is now 95 science. Hey, if you've made it this far in the video, why not give it a like? And while you're at it clicking buttons, why not subscribe to the channel as well? Not only will you help the channel grow, but you'll be more likely to see future stuff from the channel. Thanks! Back to the game, I've made a very exciting technological development. I've got metallurgy now, which means I have access to Korea's unique unit, the Hwacha. Now, the Hwacha is a very interesting unit indeed. It replaces the cannon and is the only unique siege unit in the game. It has the same base stats of the cannon and does not require iron, but none of that is what makes it so fun. No, for you see, the Hwacha has what's called Lethal Land Bombard. That means that instead of leaving enemy units with 1 HP like other bombarding units, Hwacha can actually kill them. That means that if you were to, say, build up a huge stack of them and have them all bombard an enemy stack, you could wipe the entire thing out without losing a single hit point of your own. And if it weren't already obvious, that's exactly what I plan to do. But not before a quick reorganization of my tech queue again. I go for economics, music theory, and theory of gravity for the wonders those will unlock, then navigation and military tradition to fill out the tree and advance the era. I waste no time in building Hwacha and piling a stack on the Greek borders near Sparta. I also send the knights I build down to the south to Mycenae to deal with these southern straggler cities. Economics finishes unlocking Smith's Trading Company. In addition to its vanilla effect, it acts as essentially a second Colossus, adding more commerce to every tile that already has some. Pyongyang finishes the Knights Templar as well, meaning I'll get a few free units before the era ends. To accompany the Hwacha, I also built some musketmen, both to protect them, being siege units they are defenseless, and to actually take the cities once the garrisons are deleted. Once Seoul finishes its current project, I have it start building Smith's Trading Company, and a few turns later I have Pyongyang start JS Box Cathedral and Hyeongsan start Sistine Chapel. These two wonders will give free cathedrals in every city and double the happiness those cathedrals give. After several more turns of build-up, I decide I have enough Hwacha and musketmen parked up outside of Sparta. In the year 1000, I declare war on Greece. I capture a few workers outside Sparta, and my knights to the south capture Mycenae. To clarify my aims for the war, I'm not just doing this for more land. Okay, yes I am, but there's a specific reason I want the land. See, while my goal for this episode is to achieve maximum science, I still need an actual victory condition to close out the game. As you can imagine, I'm going for a science victory again, and to do that, I'm going to need to build a spaceship. To do that, I'm going to need certain late-game strategic resources. Unlike in Civ 4, these resources aren't optional, and unlike 5 and 6, there's no way to get these resources for free. So I'm going to have these resources in my land if I want to guarantee access to them. And the best way to do that is to control this entire continent. Also, taking out Greece will stop the constant border flipping happening with these southern cities. The start of this war coincides with the end of the Middle Ages, and the industrial era begins with steam power as my free technology. I prioritize electricity for faster workers, industrialization for factories, communism for police stations, sanitation for hospitals, and electronics for Hoover Dam. All these combined will skyrocket our economy to massive levels of productivity. Anyway, back to the war. In order to demonstrate the power of the Hwacha, I use one to destroy this Greek man-at-arms. And before you get the idea that I have any idea what I'm doing, I move the rest of the stack without it and leave it undefended where it promptly gets sniped. Don't worry, it will happen again. Well, enough showing off and faffing about, it's time to actually take Sparta. I have all my Hwacha line up, take aim, and fire. After a hail of rockets, the entire garrison is obliterated. Done. Dusted. No longer present at this location. Now that is the power of a Hwacha. Your enemy stacking a massive defensive garrison in a heavily fortified city? Not anymore, they're not! All I had to do is move one musketman onto the city tile, and Sparta is mine. The rest of the Hwacha that didn't get to fire before the city fell move on towards Athens, with those that have already been fired being protected by a contingent of musketmen that are staying behind. To the south, one knight falls to a spearman, and his cohort avenge him and take Pharsalos. However, not all is well on the Greek front. A small band of Greek swordsmen overwhelm the admittedly small garrison of Chinje and take it back for themselves. Fret not, for we will be back. Our win streak picks up again as Athens gets the Hwacha treatment, and in its capture I also get the Temple of Artemis. Nice. A turn later, and Rhodes follows suit. But Athens is deeply unhappy with me, I can't imagine why, so I queue up a marketplace in the city and start trading with other civs for their luxury resources. This will help across the board, but for now I'm just concerned with keeping my new acquisitions calm. At this point, I've cut off Corinth from the rest of Greece, so I decide to split up my stack, with some moving on to take Corinth and the rest doubling back to Argos. Unfortunately, I don't quite bring enough Hwacha to Corinth to actually eliminate the defenders, so my musketmen have to actually fight to take the city. Mercifully, they manage it without any friendly casualties, and I recapture a worker of mine that Greece had captured a few turns ago. In general, I realize I split the stack pretty badly, as the stack that was headed to Argos had 2 muskets and 10 Hwacha. All Greece would have to do is win 2 fights and they'd neuter my entire offensive. So I decided to pull both of my stacks back to Athens to regroup. Greece also lands a singular longbow near Ulsan, which I dispose of quickly. Unsatisfied with taking Chinje and their failed landing at Ulsan, Greece tries to look again and attacks Tegu. Thankfully this attack fails and Tegu lives to fight another day. With my main stack recombined, I move on towards Argos again. Before I get there, though, I have a repeat of the Sparta incident and lose 2 Hwacha after using them to kill some stray Greek units. However, like Sparta, Argos bends the knee to the might of the Huacha, and my early rocket artillery marched southeast to Halicarnassus. I take my mounted units northwest to Ephesus, where they almost managed to capture the city in one turn. The next turn, Halicarnassus and Ephesus both fall, and Greece tries in vain to recapture Argos. The fighting outside Argos results in me getting a great military leader, which I can use to create an army. I then do so, and probably forget about it entirely. In my defense, the benefit of armies is kinda moot when I can just delete everything in a city before even taking it. Naxos also falls to the cavalry, leaving Greece with only 2 cities left. I move on to Eritrea, and in my most boneheaded move this game, if not on this entire channel, I leave 5 Huacha undefended, and Greece wastes no time in destroying them. Greece continues to get the last laugh as a lone archer, who mind you only has 1 defense, takes 3 Huacha shots to kill. Eritreans built different, I guess. And now, Greece only has 1 city left. My city, Chinjae. My cavalry made short work of the under-equipped defenders, and with the liberation of Chinjae, Greece is finished. Despite being seafaring in this mod, Greece did not manage to settle any overseas colonies, so they are done for good. The excitement doesn't end there, though. Smith's trading company finishes building in Seoul, giving it even more commerce than before. Discovery of nationalism this turn also spawns us a great scientific leader. Now, I could use this scientist for their Golden Age of Science ability, since C3X fixes the bug that prevents it from working properly. However, I decide to utilize the ability to rush a wonder and rush Newton's University. My thinking is this. The Golden Age of Science would increase the science of all of our cities by 25% for 20 turns. However, building Newton's University would increase Seoul science by 100% permanently, and I'd like to guarantee we get it before any AIs have a chance to snipe it out from under us. I decide to check Seoul science output this turn before Newton's finishes, and it's making 126, made that 201 science. Newton's finishes the next turn, and I check the science total again, and now it's leapt up to 268 science. As impressive as that is, it's only going to get better from here. We're at peace for now, but I still have designs on Sumeria. My northeastern cities have been cut off by land, and there's still a chance the resources I need will spawn in their lands. However, I'm not quite ready to start anything yet. I lost 8 Huacha in the war against Greece, and I'd rather not take my chances that what I have is not enough, so I decide to replace them. I also upgrade the musketmen I still have into line infantry, just in case they need to do any actual fighting. Pyongyang finishes JS Box, and Hyangsan finishes Sistine Chapel, giving a significant happiness and culture boost across every single one of my cities. The arquebusiers protecting my cities also get upgrades in the riflemen, again, just in case. Pyongyang, having finished Box, now starts on universal healthcare, which will give a free hospital in every city. And yes, this replaces the cure for cancer from the base game. I make another check on Seoul's science output, and it's up to 292. Well, I think I've reinforced my army enough. It's time for Sumeria to be assimilated. Seoul starts the theory of evolution as my army marches on Uruk. My Huacha make very short work of their defenders, as I notice they're still building their unique unit, which replaces the spearmen. I take a quick look through their lands, and I notice they have literally 0 strategic resources anywhere, so their options are limited. I feel somewhat bad taking on someone so very defenseless, but not bad enough to stop. Not long after Uruk, Kish also falls, which finally links my northeast cities with the rest via land. Eridu, Nibiru, and Lagash all follow suit, and the most Sumeria is able to do is land a few vultures and a warrior near Chongfu. S in the chat, boys. Back at home, Hyangsan starts building Hoover Dam, which will build a hydro plant in every city, doubling the effect of factories. I take Ur, and in the process, a vulture does manage to kill a line infantry, so kudos to them. It's at this point I realize I've researched all the text I queued up at the beginning of the era, and I've just been teching the random suggestions my advisor's been giving to me, so I re-queue. There isn't anything in particular I really need, so I just beeline for motorized transportation and flight to finish off the era. I take Bad Tibira, and with that, Sumeria is no more. Now, I could declare on the Celts to take this one last city, but frankly it doesn't really seem worth it, especially since I've been trading with them for their wines. For now, it's time to settle down and focus on the goal: launch a spaceship. Sol finishes the theory of evolution, and I get steel and combustion for free from it. For Dan finishes in Hyangsan, so all those factories I've been building will be twice as effective. For an even bigger boost, I start building the ironworks in Seoul, because it's not getting enough special treatment, I guess. All those arquebusiers that I upgraded before the war into riflemen now get more new gear as they upgraded to infantry. The ironworks finishes in Seoul, giving it another plus 100% shields on top of its factory and dam. As for science, it's now skyrocketed to 434. Amazing what just some population growth can do. The industrial era ends and modern times have dawned, bringing with them the discovery of computers, which unlock research labs, and the SETI program, which is the last science-boosting wonder in the game. I also have access to mechanized infantry now, the strongest defensive infantry unit in the game. For the final tech queue, I beeline spaceflight, and then all the spaceship pieces, and backfill the rest, even if we never actually get to them. Rocketry is discovered, and I noticed my cities are having some pretty severe pollution problems. I've nerfed the pollution effects on buildings, but this might need another next patch. Well, not much I can do about that now, so let's refocus on the spaceship. With the advent of spaceflight, I can start the Apollo program, which will enable me to actually build the spaceship parts I've been researching. The next turn, Sol finishes SETI, bringing its science up to 530. I queue up a research lab and then the Apollo program. The lab finishes in a single turn, bringing the current total to 590. Fission finishes, and now that I've unlocked aluminum and uranium, I decide to check how many, if any, sources of them I have. I've got one of each. The aluminum deposit is outside Sparta, which retroactively justifies our conquest. The uranium deposit, on the other hand, is outside Kaesong, a city that we settled ourselves. That means that Sumeria's land didn't bring me any resources I need, but I paid for all 4X's in this 4X game, I'm gonna use them. The Apollo program finishes, signaling the rapid approach of our victory. Seoul starts on the engine, Pyongyang gets the cockpit, Hyangsan gets the docking bay. Hyangsan finishes its part first, and while I'm trying to negotiate open borders with the Celts, I realize I never bothered establishing embassies with everyone. Kinda moot this late in the game, but I know it'll bug me if I don't do it. The cockpit and engine both finish, and Seoul moves on to the planetary party lounge. Gotta keep all those explorers from getting cabin fever after all. After researching ecology, I queue up mass transit systems everywhere to eliminate the pollution my cities are getting from their high populations. That should hopefully cut back on the devastation the land around them is experiencing. Not much else happens of note besides building the rest of the spaceship, so let's just go through them rapid fire. Storage and supply. Exterior casing. Fuel cells. Life support. Thrusters. And stasis chamber. And now, with the spaceship complete, I press the launch button and lean back. I want to let the victory cutscene play properly this time after I caused the game to crash with it back in the Arabia game. Holds up pretty well after all these years, doesn't it? Honestly, I think I'd prefer this one to the cutscene you get in Civ 4. Also, I feel like I should share that even though this looks fine while I'm playing it, and for you right now, for some reason OBS renders the cutscene like this. Probably a consequence of a 20-year-old game trying to play a pre-rendered cutscene at a monitor size it doesn't even know exists. Well, that was a fun game. Definitely one of my shortest victories thanks in no small part to the magic of the Hwacha. They really are nuts in this game. I can only hope this trend continues and Hwacha prove to be just as fun in future games. In general, I think this is one of my better performances, Hwacha losses aside. Here, at the end of the game, I take one last pass at optimizing Soul's science output, and it now makes a whopping, wait for it, 801 science. Now, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to tell how much science your entire empire makes as a whole, and I'm certainly not going to go through all the science outputs of my cities and count them all up myself, so I can't really give too much context for exactly how much that is, but I can say that the typical output I get from a single city at this stage of the game is around 100 to 120 science, so that's pretty impressive. And yes, full disclosure, without the changes I made in this mod, you wouldn't be able to replicate this exactly in the base game. However, don't let that stop you from trying. Plus, my mod is publicly available for anyone to download, so you can try it there for yourself too. Or not, whatever, I'm not your mom. If you've made it this far, thank you all so much for watching. Your support means everything. I couldn't genuinely do this without all of you. And, as always, be good, be safe, and be strong. I'll see you all next time.